Johnny Sources is now 4-0, and he strikes again as Hagen Danner is being called up by the Toronto Blue Jays. And in a shocking turn of events, Alek Manoah is the one being sent down. So the Blue Jays must have seen enough out of Hyun-Jin Ryu to send Manoah back down and iron some things out. So we'll break that down on this episode of Jays Digest, as well as a Bo Bichette injury update. We've got some great news on that front, so you want to stick around for what's coming up next. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. And we were not expecting to make this video today. Now, we thought Johnny Sources would be right again, and Johnny Junta of the Gate 14 podcast has struck again. He was right. He's now 4-0 on his predictions, and I don't know where he's getting these sources from, but someone's got to give him the respect he deserves, because Hagen Danner is being called up, and he'll make his major league debut tonight for the Toronto Blue Jays out of the bullpen. And Alek Manoah, another rough start for him last time around, and he has been sent down. So in an up and down season for him, and in a season that none of us could have predicted, it's gone from bad to worse, Nick.
Yeah, very, very shocking. And, once that report came out that Hagen Danner was going to be called up, I was trying to go through my head and who they'd send down and kind of trying to work that out. And again, like you said, they must have a lot of faith in Hyun-Jin Ryu, especially considering, his injury that he had in his last start. But before we get into the video, make sure to hit the subscribe button as we break this crazy news down. So the Toronto Blue Jays came out and said that Hagen Danner was recalled from AAA and will be active tonight. Manoa option to AAA, and Johnny Sources was the one who originally broke that down, which I have a screenshot for later. But Peter, initial thoughts on this move, given Alek Manoah's rough start again against a pretty bad Cleveland Guardians offense. I'm shocked that they sent him down, especially given all the time. He spent over a month in the minors. I guess he still has some things to work on, and that they have tons of faith in Hyun-Jin Ryu.
Yeah, well, it's clear that he still has some things to work on. And Nick, you and I, we both knew that this six-man rotation was going to be a temporary one, because the Jays had a stretch of 17 games in 17 days. That's starting to wind down now. They have 3 off days coming within the next week. So they don't need a six-man rotation. But the obvious choice was to send either one of Alek Manoah or Hyun-Jin Ryu to the bullpen and be that long man and give you multiple innings in relief. And that's not going to happen. I guess the Jays saw enough out of Hyun-Jin Ryu to have him in that 5th starter spot, to deploy him out there every 5th day. And he's looked okay since coming off the IL. Obviously, the stuff is not what it used to be. He's not the same pitcher that the Jays went out and acquired from the LA Dodgers, but he's serviceable. He's someone that has given them a chance to win in both outings that he's had. So I don't mind it, but it's a little bit shocking that they sent Alek Manoah down. Once they called him up the first time, I thought that was it. I thought they were just going to ride it out for the rest of the season, but that's clearly not the case. He's still got a lot to work on in AAA Buffalo, and they're okay with sending him down.
And he wasn't, awful in his start since coming up. Dan Shulman mentioned in the broadcast before his last start that I believe it was a 4.25 ERA over since his return, which again is kind of what we said in our videos and our other shows, is that's solid from, in theory, your number 5 starter at this point. But touching on Hagen Danner a little bit here, he's been a solid prospect. He's had a bit of a rough, 2 games in AAA, or Dunedin, sorry. But I mean, Hagen Danner's a guy that we've spoke about a few times. He's pretty close to Major League ready, and clearly they think he's Major League ready. As a good fastball, 96 to up miles per hour, which is very, very solid. And I think he's a guy that could play out of the pen. But it is a bit strange that, they are sending down Manoah, especially given how good our bullpen has been. But maybe that's part of it because of how taxed it is. But, you have Trevor Richards coming back soon, Jordan Romano. So maybe this could be a temporary thing. We might have a video on that later, but it could just be a temporary thing to get, some of the bullpen guys some rest, because with the injuries of Richards, who is, your long guy for a couple of innings, and Jordan Romano, maybe just, giving some guys some rest. But there is a lot of off days upcoming, so a bit of a confusing decision. But like you said, one of Ryu or Manoah would make the most sense. But I guess they wanted to also keep Jay Jackson on the roster because of how dominant he's been.
Well, it's pretty clear that Manoah is probably going to be back in September when the rosters expand, and he's going to rejoin that bullpen as the long man. But for the time being, they want him to start every 5th day and develop that rhythm again, because he's been in and out of the lineup. He's been up and down from the minors and the major leagues. So they want him to establish a routine and get some consistency. And whether we like it or not, as it stands right now, Alek Manoah is a big part of the future of the Toronto Blue Jays. I know it doesn't look like it right now, but they got to get him right, because He was their best pitcher last season, or you could argue that Gosman was their best pitcher, but he was a Cy Young candidate last year, and now he's been one of the worst starters in Major League Baseball. So they got to figure this thing out. They can't keep running him out there, especially not in the middle of a pennant race, because he's costing you games. He's not keeping you in those ball games that you have to desperately win down the stretch if you're the Toronto Blue Jays. So it makes sense. They want him to establish a routine, and they can't keep justifying running him out there every fifth day. So I understand this move, but it's just a tough pill to swallow considering all the expectations coming into this season for him.
Yeah, it continues a wild year so far. And again, shout out to Johnny Gunta who made the tweet. Hagen Danner has been called up to the Blue Jays 18 hours ago, and we saw this. We were just wondering about who they'd call up. So very, very interesting. Let's get into something a bit more positive, which is Bo Bichette. And let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on the Manoa demotion. But so a couple of key updates here from yesterday. So John Steiner tells us that Bo Bichette has been hitting in the cage for at least a couple of days, and he has started to jog lightly, but hasn't done any actual running. He likely won't be back this weekend when he's eligible to come off the IL, but he is improving, taking swings, jogging around, still needs to dial up the intensity. And again, he's probably not going to come back this weekend, which I'm really not too worried about. We should be able to take care of business, although the Cubs have been doing unbelievable. Bo Bichette's, his return is seeming like early to mid next week, which is probably the best case scenario when the injury first happened. It looked like he may even be out, for the season once people originally first saw the injury. With Bo Bichette coming back soon, if we can kind of just tread water for a little bit, we're a game and a half above the Seattle Mariners, which is, not the best spot to be, but if we can get Bo Bichette back, Jordan Romano back, and Trevor Richards back, along with Chad Green, who was also injured but should be okay to come back next couple weeks or so, we have a lot of additions to this team coming very, very quickly to help down the stretch. However, that means some roster moves are going to be, crunch, which we'll discuss as that happens. But Bo Bichette, it's good news.
Yeah, and we've been touching on that. The Jays have been kind of treading water thus far with Bo Bichette out of the lineup, and the offense hasn't improved. And you can't expect that when you take the best hitter out of a lineup that is already struggling for the majority of the season. So we didn't expect the Jays to catch fire once Bo Bichette leaves that starting lineup, but they've managed to scrape some wins together. They've been winning some ugly baseball games, but there's nothing wrong with that. You got to take them as they come, and I'm sure he's going to be a big boost to this lineup, especially considering the way Paul DeJong has been swinging the bat ever since being acquired from the Cardinals. I still like what he's done on the defensive end. I still think he's going to be a valuable guy down the stretch. But right now, there's no comparison between him and Bichette, and you're replacing a perennial 9-hitter at this point in his career with a guy who's probably going to win the Silver Slugger at the position and who's probably going to win the batting title in the American League. So it makes sense that the Jays have been struggling. I cannot wait till he gets back. It can't happen sooner enough, but the Jays need him, and hopefully he's 100% ready and no off days when he is ready to return.
Yeah, and it starts very, very important. I mean, every series at this point of the year is very, very important, but it's going to be a fun weekend. Peter, you're going to be going to a couple of games. Jose Bautista was signed to that one-day contract, and a lot of people were hoping that the subsequent move would be to call up Bautista for a day and have him hit in the lineup, but that's not going to happen. But that'll wrap up.
Just don't let Guillermo Martinez talk to him.
Yeah,
let's keep him away from Guillermo.
Yeah, and that'll wrap up the video. Very, very surprising news on this Friday afternoon. I feel like all the news that's always crazy drops on Fridays, but games are going to be exciting this week, and the Jays need to start winning, and they need to start going on a bit of a win streak if they want to separate themselves, because I don't know how much more my heart can take of September baseball after 2021. But that'll wrap up the video. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you later.
Thanks.